Welcome to Pause for the Truth, where you can sit back, relax, and hear an honest dialogue about health, wealth, legal, and social issues. The hosts are Dr. Rogers Kane, family practice physician, and Jocelyn Turner, health education consultant, with co hosts from the Northeast Florida Medical Society and its foundation. Stay tuned for the truth about matters affecting you and your family. We're here to tell you what's really going on and why.
Good evening and welcome to Pause for the Truth. I am your co-host, Jocelyn Turner. Such a wonderful Tuesday in November. Dr. Kane, I can't believe that next week is Thanksgiving already. What is really going on?
Oh, golly. I mean, time is going by so fast. At least we're still, all of us on this broadcast tonight are still here enjoying this time that we are having with our friends and families and even patients. Is just to be around and being able to enjoy life is still a good thing. I just, it seems like it's going by fast, but it is what it is. It's here.
Well, we're so pleased tonight, Dr. Kane. As you say, we're all excited about being here and have two dynamic guests that I have the pleasure of just meeting tonight or a few minutes before the broadcast. And so tonight we have Dr. Danielle Brew and Dr. Zalika Nisbeth. How are you doing, doctors?
Doing great.
Fantastic.
Fantastic. As always, Dr. Kane, usually I'm outnumbered. Now you're outnumbered tonight.
Yeah.
Girl power, girl power.
It's okay. All pretty women. All pretty women. I can't say much more.
So tonight we're talking about something that's really important. When, as I've mentioned before, when we brainstorm and talk about what topics to do each week, not only do we talk amongst ourselves, but we ask others. And I think, Dr. Kane, you have been in conversation with Dr. Brew. So tonight we're going to talk about who suffers most when physicians leave. Now, we don't think about it. I'm going to tell you my perception of this because I do try to do my homework before we do a podcast. When I think of physicians leaving, I think that when I call to make an appointment with a physician, and I'm told that the earliest appointment that the physician has is 4 months later. And so that tells me that there could be a physician shortage. That's an awesome physician and everybody wants to see them, right? And so their slots are full. But I also know that because of COVID and the pandemic, that people in all professions started reevaluating what they wanted to do with their lives. And because so many people have refused to get their vaccine, since I work in COVID vaccine hesitancy, in trying to educate and encourage people to get the vaccine, bless you. I know that a lot of people are still reluctant, Drs. Brew and Nisbeth. So tell me, from your perspective, what does it mean and who suffers? I should say that who suffers when physicians leave, and why are physicians leaving, Dr. Brew?
Okay. Oh, that is a very, very good question. So, first, why are physicians leaving? I guess the first way of answering that is talking about burnout, because many physicians are leaving because they're absolutely burned out. And it's not just COVID. I think COVID was just the icing on the cake. Physicians were burned out prior to COVID, and then the stresses related to COVID and everything really just made it worse. And it made us reevaluate what we need to do. So, defining burnout first, I went to a website to get a clear definition of it. And it's defined as long-term stress reaction marked by emotional exhaustion, depersonalization, and lack of sense of personal accomplishment. So what that means is literally you are just tired. You're tired of hearing all the things, and you don't have the capacity anymore to hold that space, that sacred space that the doctor and patient has with one another. And then the depersonalization, one of the main things about being a really good doctor is being able to see that person as a person, not just as, oh, you're my 8 o'clock, you're my 9:15, no, you are, insert that person's name, and you remember their story, you know their children, you know their family. And when you start to depersonalize, or when a person begins to depersonalize their patients, you stop thinking of them as the wonderful person that they are. And then that lack of sense of accomplishment, if you are become a physician, you've gone through a lot to get there. And you start seeing everything. It's just like, yeah, humdrum, who cares? Nothing even matters. So when you have physicians going through this and in very high stress situations, before COVID, you could go to work and okay, you're seeing sick people, whatever. But during COVID, literally the thought that I had was, oh my gosh, I'm going to get sick. Then I'm going to bring this illness home to my family. My husband's a teacher. He's going to get all the kids sick. And it's like a constant thought that's going in your head. So one of the main reasons physicians are leaving is because they're just at capacity and they can't do it anymore. And they know that people are going to suffer from it. And you get to a point where you're like, okay, I need to literally save myself, because one of the consequences of physician burnout, or just burnout in general, is there's also like a physician suicide epidemic. They're literally killing themselves. We've had physicians here in Jacksonville that have killed themselves over the amount of stress that's going on. So when people are at that point, they're seeing that their life is out of balance, they're stressed all the time, they don't like the work situation, they begin to make a choice. Even though they've gone through all this training, all these things, they have to make a decision about what they want to do with their life, because what they're doing in that moment and how they're seeing the situation is not quite working.
And Dr. Brew, as well as Dr. Nisbeth, I forgot, and forgive me, forgot to ask what your specialty is. Not that it has anything to do with tonight's discussion, but just so that our audience would know a little bit about you. Can you tell us, Dr. Brew, what your specialty is?
Yes. So I'll give you a little bit of my bio. I'm a family medicine and obesity medicine doctor, but I'm also one of those burned out physicians who pretty much restructured her whole life. And now I have a coaching business as well as being a physician called Brew Wellness Collective, where I help physicians and other professionals who are burned out and overwhelmed.
Wow. I need to come see you, but I'm not going to tell you for which part. Dr. Nisbeth.
I tell. No, no.
Dr. Nisbeth, how about sharing a little bit about yourself as well?
Okay, well, thank you. So I am was born in Atlanta, raised in Jacksonville. So I've donned myself as a Florida peach. Attended Andrew Jackson High School, University of South Florida, Meharry Medical School, best kept secret in the United States. And I decided to come back home after being away for about 10 years to train at St. Vincent's in their family medicine program. So I'm a family medicine physician that too was very burnt out and left the practice after being so bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, spending all my time to become a physician, only to reach a point of, what am I doing here? What's the purpose of this? I'm drained. I'm exhausted. I promised myself that I would take care of myself first, and stepping away is what I did. While stepping away, I didn't really step away, but made a pivot in life and opened up a laser hair removal boutique in Savannah after an opportunity was presented. So I do provide laser hair removal that is safe for skin of color. I am my own patient. And then I also started a direct primary care practice, Florida Peach Direct Primary Care, in which I am now accepting patients from the Savannah area as well as Jacksonville, Florida area. And that is not the end, because I will be working on pretty much launching a public health venture to address health literacy because of this physician burnout and shortage that we are facing, in which primary care actually will suffer or is suffering the most because of the shortage. So that's a little bit about me. So to answer your question of who suffers, I believe we all suffer. The physicians with the suicide rates, a physician takes their life. One physician takes their life every single day, as well as pretty much suffering from anxiety and depression, broken marriages, drug abuse, as well, alcohol abuse, and then the families that suffer as well from those people not being present, and then just the population in general not being able to access, have to wait 4 to 6 months in order to see someone. And many of us know that primary care is critical to the health of an individual, let alone that of really a nation. So we all suffer.
Yeah, Dr. Nisbeth, as you were talking, I'm thinking of knowing as history and really the future goes, that baby boomers are getting older. And I mean, I was taken aback, by the way, when I realized I'm a boomer. I'm at the final year of that, that boomer era, and I'm like, oh my goodness. So I'm now talking about myself, but I also am reminded of my elderly relatives who have already started feeling the effect of physicians moving further and further away from their homes. It's not just a matter of them being able to drive to the physician that's close by, but they're having to drive further. And of course, as they age, then that's going to even be more of a challenge. But I'm also reminded, thinking of from the physician's perspective, that managing a practice, for example, not only do you have to worry about taking care of your patients, if you want to grow the business, obviously word of mouth is the best, I think, way of growing your business, but you may have to be a marketer to market your business, but you also have got to be the CFO in terms of the finances of your business and just the whole business aspect of growing a business. So I can only imagine, Drs. Brew and Nisbeth, and even you, Dr. Kane, how overwhelming that might be, especially as you're starting out, right? As you get older, then you can older in your practice, then you'll be able to perhaps grow and add more staff to your team. For those of you who are just joining us, tonight we're talking about who suffers most when physicians leave. If you have a question of Drs. Brew, Nisbeth, or even Dr. Kane, you can dial 888-669-1280. Dr. Kane, you look like you have a question. The more you spin that pen, it's a hint to me that you have a question of one of the doctors.
Well, it's not just as much as a question, but you got all of you addressed several things. Me being the senior guy, period, the oldest person on the panel, but definitely being the oldest physician on the panel, because my kids are these guys' age. I've seen a lot. I've experienced the opening the practice and the growth of the practice and the growth of your patients. As I got older, so did my patients. I got geriatric. My patients moved beyond geriatric. I mean, they got much older. And one of the problems is not even a problem, but one of the reasons I wanted to chime in is because what you said in terms of the baby boomers and they're retiring and the need for them in this time when we're trying to transition from fee for service to value-based medicine. Things that, that in itself causing physician burnout because they're demanding productivity. And this time productivity is about quality and not quantity. Where all these years they've been preaching in, the hospitals, which some of you guys worked at, and I won't call a name to any of them, but the hospitals and the institutions that are really still trying to demand or were demanding from physicians quantity of patients. They wanted you just to see that body. You lost your identity as in terms of what you thought you were getting into medicine for. The philanthropic, the whole ethics behind medicine seem to have getting lost in the business of medicine. And, here on Pause for the Truth, we talk a lot about the business of medicine. But it causes the physician burnout because you feel you no longer have the ability to direct in which your personal and professional growth is occurring. You know, you got other people managing your time simply because they're demanding more work of you, and you can't get enough hours in the day to do that. And I totally understand. On the other hand, we have a bunch of patients. In particular, though, I'm in the baby boomers generation as well. Particularly those that are the most sickest, because historically they didn't have the access to care like they do with young ladies, like what I got on the show with me. All I wanted to do was to bring out the fact that you guys really worked hard to get where you're at. You're excellent physicians, because I've seen the work on both of you and the kind of work you do. Excellent physicians, but you can't take care of anybody from the grave. And as one of you guys mentioned about physician suicide, if it's not suicide or homicide, because some physicians have been killed as a result of not being able to give patients what they want. But you're still putting yourself mentally at risk of not being able to just function as a person, as a mom. You ladies, as a mom, I put a whole lot at risk as a dad coming along. It was a different time frame. And I understand young folks having a different approach to it. So with that, I'm going to ask the question. You guys are young enough that you're doing families, okay? How have you began to compensate this demand on your time as a physician? How have you began to address that and put it in the proper perspective of your family life and trying to raise your families and at the same time just stay focused and function for yourself?
Can I take that one?
Yeah, both of you guys.
So one of the reasons that really made me decide that it's time for me to leave the practice that I was in was, so I got married about a year ago, a little over a year ago. And for me, I had to go through fertility treatment, all that stuff to have kids. And I was trying to schedule an appointment to go through the treatment. And I was so excited. I'm like, look, I got married. I have changed my life. I've lost 100 pounds. I'm in the best shape of my life. And I literally could not take off the time to schedule the appointments I needed to expand my family. And I was sitting there in my office and I burst out crying, and I knew that's when I had to make a shift. Because if after I've gone through all this for years to get to this point, cannot stop to make an appointment to do the things that I need to do without completely stressing out, then this is not where I need to be. So for me, when I was sitting there just really upset in my office by myself, something in my brain just clicked and everything started to shift for me. And I knew that I needed a schedule that had flexibility, where I had that time to be able to do different things. And just if I needed to make a pivot very quickly, I could, where I could not do that in my previous job. Now I can. I work 2 part-time jobs actually, and then I have my own business. And that
you got a lot of time for yourself.
And I still have a lot of I walk my dog 3 times a day. I'm with my husband more than I've ever been. And before, when I was working the other job, I literally did not like the person I am. I'm generally a happy person. I'm like this, happy all the time. But I would come home from work just mad, angry. And I thought to myself, is this the kind of mother I want to be? Do I want to come home pissed off? Literally, I was pissed off every day about something. And that's just not how I wanted to represent myself with my family. I didn't go through all this training to create this life to be able to support them financially. And then they don't want to be around me because I'm a butthole. So that is what made me really want to make that change. And I think one thing that could be helpful in some of the larger systems is having more flexibility when it comes to scheduling, or if someone needs time off. And you mentioned something about the pressure of seeing patients. One of those reasons I couldn't make an appointment was because literally the day before I had a meeting with my bosses, and they were like, we need you to see more and more patients. We need you to double book. And so you're kind of stuck between this rock and the hard place. I want to be there for my patients. I want to, but then I'm also a person and I want to be a good
You
wife.
have a life. In
I
other
want to have a life. So it's finding a way to create that balance. And that's what I've been able to do now.
Dr.
So I
Nisbet,
hate to put you on the spot. Oh, I'm sorry.
let Dr. Nisbet give her.
So I'm coming from a different perspective as a very single woman with no kids. I decided that I wanted to come back home after being away for 10 years because I felt like I was missing out on my uh, family events, family reunions, birthday parties, and knowing that I wanted to be involved, that I did not only want to be present for other people like my patients or staff, but also my very own family of taking care of home first. And that's what got me back to Jacksonville. I would say over the years, I've actually have not been able to find balance, especially as a medical student, with maintaining a relationship. Of if I felt somebody was getting in my way of studying, or I felt an exam, or just wasn't allowed that time, then they had to go. They
They
knew
gotta go.
they had to go. However, I am 35 years old, and I sat here wondering, like, I did everything everybody told me to do. I went to school and I left the boys alone and all of that, but why am I still single, or what's happening, or am I? So finding that type of balance, I still haven't, and would only pray and hope that I can make that time. But as far as I would say, especially this past year of launching out solo, I was able to help with facilitating my family reunion, attend birthday parties, and just be present and more social with my own family, as well as being more social with friends, because I would even say over the years of just being consumed with training in school and stress, I don't think I always was a good friend, in having to not being able to be present all the time for other people because I'm just struggling, barely maintaining with myself. So it's a journey, I would say, of finding that balance. That
Miss Turner, let me ask you this. Did you hear that much difference between the two? Did you see that? Did you hear the commonality of what they both said? And that is they had no time for themselves. They had no time for their families. Maybe, granted, Dr. Brew family was husband and kids, okay, well, prospective kids, okay. And Dr. Nisbeth was family, mom, dad, sister, siblings, cousins.
mhm.
It was the same problem. And that is no time for themselves or no life for themselves. I mean, that's the commonality I see. I could
Yeah,
be
but speaking of family, I also know, and you don't have to share this, but I'm also thinking of conversations that I've had with people who families made sacrifices for them to go off to college. And then when they choose to do something different than what that those sacrifices steered them towards in terms of your medical degrees, did you get any pushback from your family about your decision to change the direction of how you were? Oh, Dr. Nisbeth is smiling. What you were going to do?
I got a lot of crazy looks. So many a lot of crazy looks of, what do you mean you're leaving? Are you not working? Are you trying to figure it out? I was told you better go back to work for stability, or please promise, because of initial the stressors of a startup. But not one person really was there with me up when I'm up late, whether that's for preparing for an exam, on top of even getting past all of that and preparing for the next day, or enduring the work of the day and the people. Not one person was there and endured that or understood what I was actually facing. So definitely, even now when I discuss what I'm doing, I still get crazy stares of like, what do you mean? So,
It was a personal decision. I get it. What about you, Dr. Brew?
So for me, my family already knows I beat to my own drum. And when I make a decision, I make a decision, period. So I just told them what my plans were. And they always knew I had an entrepreneurial heart. And it was easier for me to make that shift. But the only person I really wanted to have buy in was my husband, because I made the decision to make that shift about less than 6 months into us being married. And so, how our whole life was structured was going to be different. Our financial life was going to be different. My life was going to be different. And he was the one who was going to be impacted more. So, I wanted to make sure he was comfortable with me making that change before I fully stepped out. So we talked about it for a couple months actually before I ever disclosed it to my employers or to anyone else, because I wanted to make sure he was comfortable with what I'd already had planned and had full trust in me and my ability to make a pivot. And clearly he did.
Which is wonderful. And, as I think back over the years and, looking at the physicians that I've had over the years, not you, Dr. Kane, I'm talking about somebody else. Because at one point, Dr. Kane was my physician. But I think back of physicians and not being treated so nicely by a physician. And actually had only in my lifetime did I have to report a physician, because I knew what the right way was to be treated. And so I'm thinking that now that I hear what you're saying, that physician may have been burnt out because they were not like that when I first started going to them. But then as time progressed, he was. And so I had to make that decision. And so I read something that said burnout is a long-term stress reaction marked by emotional exhaustion, depersonalization. Dr. Brew, you mentioned that, and a lack of sense of personal accomplishment. So did either of you ever feel any of those kinds of ways as you were transitioning from what you used to do to what you do now? And on top of that, do you feel that what you're doing now is still making a difference that you wanted to do, which is why you became a physician in the first place?
Yeah. Absolutely. I feel like I felt at some point all of those. And I was very conscious of the depersonalization part because I went into medicine because my grandmother had a horrible experience in healthcare. And I told myself I would never contribute to that. And I wanted to make sure that if someone was in my care, then I was going to take care of them. And when I saw that I had to muster up all of my energy and do all the self-care practices just to be a normal functioning human at work, that's when I knew something was going on. And then that lack of sense of accomplishment, that one is a real one as well. Honestly, it wasn't until I got out of my previous job and started working and actually working with a coach where he had to remind me that being a doctor is actually a big accomplishment. Because to me, it was just like, oh, yeah, I'm a doctor. No one's going to want to work with me. No one's going to want to do anything. No, actually, it's an amazing thing. And everybody wants to work with me. And then he reminded me of the things that I have done and are doing that are wonderful accomplishments, the coaching that I've done, the different trainings I've done. When you're in a system, and I don't know if they do this consciously or unconsciously, a lot of the people, the managers or whatnot in different healthcare systems, they work little by little to make you seem like just the person who's seeing the patient. They try to decrease the importance of what you're doing every single day. And you start to kind of think that, and you think that what you're doing isn't making an impact. And you forget that what you going in and speaking to someone or helping them through their disease or whatever is a major thing. So it took me a while to really kind of remember the importance of what I did. And I think I am making a difference now. One of the jobs I'm working at is working in a very underserved space with people who completely help. When it comes to healthcare literacy, there is like none. So I know I'm making an impact and being an example to the young people I work with. I also get to work in a cancer center, so I get to be a bright light for them. And then what I do with coaching, my goal with coaching is to make it so that people don't have to experience Or if they do experience what I experienced, make it a little bit less. Their journey doesn't have to be as difficult as mine. So I'm still feeling a lot of satisfaction and reward with what I'm doing in the different areas I'm working in now.
Wow, thank you. What about you, Dr. Nisbeth?
I have to agree. I honestly, it wasn't until this past year that I realized the chronic stress state that I've been living in for many years, even prior to medical training. But that sense of, or lack of sense of accomplishment, I felt that since honestly graduating medical school. Instead of it being the happy, I mean, the most monumental graduation for me, but at the same time, at that point, I was already disappointed in the healthcare system. Just thinking like, I was not expecting this, or thought it was going to be different. Like, what am I doing? Like, I feel like I'm just a part of a huge systemic problem. And I've been in school this whole time. What am I like? What am I doing to help people? And then it just continued throughout residency, and to the point of post residency. And I'm in rural medicine, and just trying to manage patients there, to where I just had to stop myself and stop and literally smell the roses, and just embrace each day and recognize the impact I was having on individuals that I encounter every day. I tend to think on a scaled level when it comes to impact and want that type of impact, but I had to bring it on in and actually see what I was doing every day with each individual person one by one. And for me, that was definitely being that bright light, as well as bringing about education as well, and then just compassion and care. With what?
Let me say this real quick and ask this. Let me make this statement. Both of you guys have embodied one point that I want to make, and that is, as a physician, when you went into the field, you felt that you were going to make a difference in everybody's lives. You know, you're going to take the bull by the horn and save the world. And then all of a sudden it was taken from you, your leadership role in being able to do that. And you became more of a, I mean, I know that's what they tried to make me of. You became more of a pawn to be able to make a big institution or institutions money, whether it's big pharma, whether it's hospitals, whether it's investment groups, whatever it may be. And it just took away your ability to fulfill. It took away my ability, or tried to. I went off on my own, but tried to take away my ability to do the things what I got into medicine for. That was to save everybody. I mean, I know I was being very well, you guys know the feeling, but still, I thought I was going to save the world, and then to get smited so quickly in terms of this is business. It's the politics of medicine. It's the business of medicine, and it's not about. In some places, it's not about taking care of people, which is one of the reasons we went to medical school.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was the disappointing part, or being required to follow rules and regulations that made no sense at all, and was not helpful for the patients who we were there for, and definitely detrimental to the providers as well. And just knowing like, we're smarter than this to take this, or again, this doesn't make any sense, or very wasteful. Why am I a part of it? And then rotating with other physicians in the community, and all they have to say is they're doing the best that they can and just taking it. And I'm like, no.
Blowing you right off. Well, that brings up the part about your male counterparts. I know Dr. Brew, you're married, and I didn't ask whether or not your husband was a physician or just what. And Dr. Nesbitt, you're not, but still male counterparts in terms of colleagues, physicians. Have you guys spoken with them? What have you heard from them? Is there anything you can give the audience about their concerns as well, since I'm outnumbered tonight this term.
So they are feeling the burnout just like we are as well, because a lot of men, especially men in our generation, they want to be with their family too. They have the same concerns. They don't have to birth the children, but they want to have a part. They want to have a life outside of being a physician. So actually, one of the reasons I went into coaching was because I saw one of my colleagues who was a male go through a terrible burnout situation right in front of me. And I knew in that moment that it was time for, well, I wanted to learn more ways to help him. And that is what kind of got me into looking at different coaching things, because I've been doing coaching for a while. So it's not just Black female physicians. I think it's all physicians, male and female, are experiencing it, because we all are experiencing those same pressures of the time crunch. We want to spend time with patients, but we can't. We have to see a certain number, the unrealistic expectations, and not feeling like you have autonomy or being able to control what's going on with your advancement in your career, or just even with your own schedule.
So we had
go ahead, JT.
I'm sorry. We had several questions that were pending from our audience, and I wanted to make sure that we asked those. One had to do that I vaguely remember, and I don't have it up, but it talked about the use of substances, be it alcohol or other substances, because when you're going through burnout, sometimes some people, as you know, will start using those things that they may not typically otherwise use, right? And is there an increase in substance or alcohol abuse for physicians who are under stress and trying to keep up with the caseloads? And if so, what can be done?
Coaches?
So absolutely, there's an increase in substance and alcohol abuse. So one, a lot of that is trying to treat the person before they get to the point where they're abusing substances. That's number one. So identifying early signs of burnout so that the person can get the help. That's one thing as a coach I am trying to do, is get people to understand the early signs of burnout, so we don't have to get to the point where you're at suicide or you're doing drugs or whatever to try to cope with the stress. So one, trying to identify it early. If a person is having some kind of substance abuse, I think it's going to take more than just seeing a coach, seeing a therapist, working with a substance abuse counselor, people like that, to really help to stabilize that person, because now it's more than just, oh, I'm tired at work. Now you're using a substance in a way that is inappropriate. So really working from that standpoint, and also looking at the different tools you might have, whether it's taking some time off to get yourself more stable in a place where you can make different decisions. So it is knowing that you don't have to hold the brunt of everything on you, that creating that support team around you so that you can then make those decisions and come out of whatever the substance or alcohol abuse situation that you're in.
I will also add that many bad habits are formed during the journey. I would say I drank more in medical school than I had during any part of my life. That's usually like the celebration of the slogan was, you work hard, play harder. So you put in all that time, you get the job done. And then there's this reprieve, and the reward is partying. The reward is alcohol. The reward are other substances as well. So the rates have always been high amongst physicians. The underlying issue hasn't really been, many haven't, I don't think, drilled down to it or really been aggressive with addressing it, because this is nothing new at all. I know my first day of medical school, they told me to look around, make sure these people are with you at graduation. And also, by the way, the physician suicide rate is extremely high, especially among African American women. So a known fact for a very long time. I would say I had to catch myself during residency as a wind down of coming home to wind down to a drink every day. And so that self-recognition and realizing like I am coping, or why do I need this alcohol to, like, I'm grabbing this to deal with stress. This is not healthy at all. And having to catch myself there on my own, and did not reach out for anyone when it came to that. And then further along the way, when I'm out in practice, and so recognizing so not having alcohol at all to as a resort, but having to reach out, instead grabbing my journal and actually writing, and that has been quite therapeutic for me, and just writing my thoughts and plans and visions, and getting that was a big stress relief as well. Some people use physical activity as a reprieve, also dancing. So finding that place that gives you restoration. So which is rest is that root, and understanding that there's more than one way for us to rest. There's more than one way for us to be revived and brought back to our full restoration. A friend of mine gifted me with this book called Sacred. It was actually written by a physician, Dr. Sandra Dalton Smith, and she speaks about the different forms of rest. That rest isn't just physical, of you sleeping 7 to 8 hours. There are different ways of resting to restore your spirit, to help with healing from that chronic stress and burnout. So there's the physical stress. There's physical rest, mental rest, emotional rest, spiritual rest, social rest, sensory rest, as well as creative rest. There is an assessment. If you actually Google Sacred Rest, Dr. Sandra Dalton Smith, there's an assessment that can be done for you to be able to identify what areas in your life are you do you need to rest in, that where you will receive some rejuvenation to be able to restore the part that has been drained, and actually feeding another aspect that's going to help you keep going. So multiple tools for your own self when it comes to self-development, but also very important to reach out to others as well.
Speaking of reaching out to others, there was a question. I'm sorry, Dr. I'm sorry, Dr. Kane. I just wanted to ask if we had another question that someone posted. I wanted to make sure I get back to it. It talked about mentors. Did either of you ever use a mentor? Do you currently have a mentor? Dr. Brew, you mentioned a life coach or someone, I guess that's who you trained with. But do you have any mentors now? And even throughout your journey, Dr. Nisbeth, when you mentioned when you started medical school, they took you around, but at any point, did anybody link you with a seasoned physician maybe, or other mentor to help you as you began your journey?
So for me, honestly, my time during residency I feel like it was a protected time because I had great mentors during my residency experience. I know my first episode of burnout was during residency, but because I had those mentors who were faculty, they were able to help me through that. And then after residency, I have been talking to other seasoned physicians within the community as mentors, but then I joined different physician communities online who are like physician entrepreneurs, and I use them as mentors to know that I can do more than just being up, and it's not minimizing what people do every day, but I can do more than being in the clinic, that there are other opportunities for me. So what I do is I try to seek out people who are doing something similar to what I would like to do and ask them. Everyone has been absolutely open to just answering questions and being there if I need anything. So that has been very helpful for me because I don't have any other doctors in my family. I don't have like a dad to go to who's a physician to say, hey, what do I do about this? No, I had to create that myself. So for me, it was creating a community of people who at a moment's notice, I can either call or text, or I already have an appointment with, or whatever, who could support me in the whatever I'm going through, whatever journey I'm in.
You and your quest for independency
Yeah.
Good life. Dr.
Well, Dr. Kane, after Dr. Elizabeth answers the question, I am going to direct a follow-up question to you. So hold tight before you
Well, no,
ask me the question.
the only thing I wanted to do was I had several physicians to text me for the call-in number. So I was just trying to get in, put that, ask Tyrone to put that back up on the board.
The dial-in number is 888-669-1280. Again, 888-669-1280 if you have a question for the doctors. Go ahead,
Okay.
Dr. Nisbeth.
So during medical training, the main mentor that I was intentional with seeking out because they were a part was my dean. And I did not, as far as reach out to any providers within the community. I was ashamed and just had that imposter syndrome, and felt like I was supposed to handle it myself, or there was something wrong with me. So really internalized a lot and just tried to get through much of it and I'm so grateful for my mentor during medical school. But then going on to residency, I honestly leaned in a lot. I was so blessed to be in a program that was where I was surrounded by so many supportive peers that looked like me. So it was practically unheard of to be in a program where over 50% of the residents are Black women. So those were my mentors and big sibs. Danielle actually was my literal big sib in support system for the most part. As far as reaching out to more experienced physicians, again, just feeling like I wasn't supposed to be experiencing what I was experiencing, and that I just needed to get it together, even post training. So reaching that point of seeing that, no, I can't do this alone. We're not meant to do this alone. And just opening up and speaking out and reaching out for help. So I am on that quest or journey of really building my team and reaching out to people. So that's my
Thank you.
story.
And Dr. Kane, I have to direct the next question for you because I know over the years that you have been working with the Northeast Florida Medical Society, really trying to grow that membership. If there are any of our audience who may be young physicians or new to the area, what can you share with them about connecting with the Northeast Florida Medical Society?
Well, let me first say this. Mentors for me, obviously my mother and my grandmother, and eventually my father. Those are initial mentors. In medical school, I had some fellow physicians or fellow students that were mentors. But one of the special things for me was doing residency when it was really, really tough in a place where there was obvious racism. It was stated. It was the way things worked out in terms of what they were trying to do to the Black students, versus the white students, or the Black students versus those non-majority school students. Bottom line was those nurses really came along and helped me out. I was so proud of the Black nurses and how they stepped up to the plate. She's dead right now, but Elizabeth Means really, really, really
Oh,
helped.
wow.
How she helped all these Black residences early on during my time. Early on over at UF Health, but during my time, I was able to fall back on her and the other nurses that helped me get through a system that was not Black folks friendly. That's not in the story, beginning of the story. It was, we were, and we continue even at this point in time, right now, and this is going to get to your question, Ms. Turner. Even at this point in time, just the mere fact of our skin color, we're treated different even as physicians. So if we're treated different, we're treated badly at times because of our skin color. Imagine what your patient is going through. What those people who are part of the healthcare system or trying to have to participate in a healthcare system that has an obvious bias against them. To get to your question, one of the in the past, and I want to say the complete saving grace, but one of the saving grace aspects of community uh, has been the Northeast Florida Medical Society, the National Medical Association, the Florida State Medical Association, the Black physicians who were out there trying to make sure they help protect their community. They did sacrifice a lot of themselves in doing that. And even today, as Dr. Brew and Dr. Nisbeth has stated, we're still sacrificing a lot of ourselves just for equity in health, just for equity in health. And so the Northeast Florida Medical Society, what we try to do is bring enough physicians together to support each other, okay, and our community so that we can thrive as a group of people. We're not just treating, obviously, Dr. Brew and Dr. Nisbet, you don't just treat Black folks. You treat it all folks. Mm-hmm. And you treat it without prejudice when it comes to taking care of your patient. Sadly, that's not what we see sometimes on the other side. And you wind up being a rescue of those people or to help rescue those people who are up against a system that is so prejudicial in terms of its equity in healthcare that they need somebody to help. And so part of what we do at the Northeast Florida Medical Society is to try to grab physicians, young, old, whatever, to help the community and themselves and each other. So when we look at Dr. Brew, we look at Dr. Nisbet, I love what these guys are doing. They're trying to maintain their own sanity, trying to maintain their own place in the healthcare system, but still help the community in terms of moving forward for what's best for community health. Did that kind of answer your question, Ms. Turner?
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Dr. Kane. And I wanted to mention the Northeast Florida Medical Society because I know over the years, I see when you all meet as a group and hear how you are bouncing things off from one another. So I wanted to mention that if you're just joining us, we're talking about who suffers most when physicians leave. I started the discussion by talking about baby boomers, the aging generation. I also want to mention to all three of the doctors, as you make the decision to change the direction of your own profession, do you think about those communities? Unfortunately, there are so many of our communities, people of color, who are already disproportionately impacted by access to medical care. Do you feel a sense of guilt, if you will, when you know that you may have been very passionate and say, I want to go and serve communities who are lacking access. But on the other hand, I need to take care of my own self first. How do you balance that? Dr. Nisbeth, you're shaking your head.
Yes, I experienced that. I mean, that was my mantra from the moment I started my college application, and just to have some stats in, and I looked up the statistics of the community of Jacksonville, and it brought me to tears because here was a place that I grew up in neighborhoods where the health rates are the poorest, are the worst. And I had no clue that was happening around, like that we're literally dying or suffering, that much suffering was going on around me. And I declared that that was the first time I learned the term underserved communities or health disparities. And that was a declaration that I made that, yes, when I become a doctor, I'm going to address these issues. I'm going to come back and, dispel, like close the gap and get rid of a lot of these health disparities that's happening in my home. And so I took that and ran with it, and that got me through. That was the, that burning passion and desire is what got me through all through training, and then post training, to the point where like I, for my own sake, um this is like, I don't know about that. And even having someone telling me like, hey, you don't have to live in the hood, you do not have to work in that same place in order to have an impact. You can make your money elsewhere, you can work elsewhere and give back in other ways. And that was like a sense of relief, because I was just thinking like, I don't have anything else to give anymore, and don't know what life will look like from here, when this is what I thought I would be doing my whole life. And it really took about 6 months of taking a step back from medicine. I was done. I was looking for other jobs, other careers. Like, what else can I do? Like with a medical degree, like I was exhausted. But it took that much. Little did I know that I really needed that rest and that step back, since I've been going for so many years, to really see where I fit in. So still finding that place, but actually like knowing that, again, like people asking me for help, and me not being able to just sit on my hands and not offer, like provide the care that I know I can give to people that are in need. And from that, like about a month or two ago, I feel like I had an aha moment of how I can give back to my community on a scaled level, and that's brought me to group-based primary care visits. So knowing that there is a healthcare shortage when it comes to healthcare professionals, especially primary care providers, but you have millions of people that need care. Health literacy is the really does have an impact on health outcomes, and it's really poor, especially in underserved communities. And wanting to address that, many contributing to the burnout was really having to see a lot of people in a short period of time, but not being able to provide them the education and education for the most part when it comes to how to take care of yourself. And with knowing that I was ready to take a step back from medicine, and knowing that many of my cohorts, like it's not just me, it's many people I've gone to school with that are pretty much saying this is not okay and I'm not with it. And me being concerned of what's going to happen to the people, who's going to take care of people. So wanting to give back that power to the people when it comes to education of how to take care of yourself, to where you're not dependent on other people or healthcare system. So I do want to do more education and do these group-based primary care visits, of being able to raise the health literacy gap when it comes to treating high blood pressure, hypertension, diabetes, as well as obesity, of seeing that these are the major factors that contribute to the high mortality and morbidity rates, especially among African Americans, but in general across the country, to be able to cut down or reduce the rates of heart attacks, strokes, and also in turn, maternal and infant mortality rates as well. So yes, that feeling guilty, but also knowing that I have to heal myself in order to be able to take care of other people as well. So
It's about balance, Dr. Nisbeth, and sound like you have found your or are finding your the
I'm still
balance.
finding.
Yeah, finding your balance. Thank you. Dr. Brew, how about you?
Yes, I had. Well, first, I want to say I loved everything you said, Dr. Nisbet. It just, seeing you step into your power, I have literally had firsthand being able to watch everything that you've gone through, and just listening to you speak right there, walking in your purpose, feeling empowered, and just speaking from an empowered way brought me chills. So I am so, so proud and so excited about everything you're doing. But anyway, for me, when it comes to the guilt, oh, that guilt was the hardest part. And I stayed in a situation where I should have left a long time ago because of my desire to care. The mission for my medical school is serve the underserved. So that was already my mission from day one. I went into medicine because I wanted to make sure that people didn't have the experience my grandmother had, who, from a person of a rural South Georgia space, a Black woman, I didn't want anyone to have a bad situation. So for me to get to the point where I knew that I couldn't serve them anymore because I wasn't in a good place, that was hard. And then and I wanted to make sure I told them to their face, because a lot of my patients at the clinic I was before, their doctor just kind of just disappeared for whatever different reason. I wanted to make sure that I actually stayed 3 months longer because I wanted to make sure you had your medicines. Let's talk about what's going on. It had nothing to, my leaving had nothing to do with you. I just had to make sure I was taking care of myself. I actually still have good relationships with the patients I had before. I saw one, I was exercising and they ran up on me on the street. and I still remember everything about them. I asked them about their health conditions. So I care about them, and I knew that I wasn't in a space to be able to care about them the way that they need to be cared for. I was not going to come to them in an upset state. I was not going to give them less than 100% because they deserved 100%. That's what they deserved. And I need to make sure I found a balance to be able to do that. So, and the way I am trying to help other people is to help other doctors not get to that point. I don't want people to get to the point where I was, and they probably will, but I want to help them get out of it. So if they want to stay in the practice they want to stay in, do that. If they want to build their own practice, do that. If they want to do direct primary care, that's fine. Go into leadership, that's fine. But helping people to create that life balance so that their life structure outside of medicine is good. So that is not contributing to the burnout that they might be experiencing.
Thank you, Dr. Brew. Well, Dr. Brew, Dr. Nisbeth, Dr. Kane. Whew, this was something else. I'll share my final thoughts at the end, but at the end of the show, which we're at that point, and we could definitely have both of you back.
Did I tell you it was going to be too?
Yeah, we could definitely have both of you back. But at the end of the show, we always like to invite our guests to share their final thoughts. And on tonight's topic, who suffers most when physicians leave, we'd like to give each one of you an opportunity to share your final thoughts. Dr. Nisbeth, I'm going to start with you. What are your final thoughts regarding tonight's discussion?
Physicians are not immune. And, you know, the words of physician, heal thyself, definitely have rung true as well. But knowing that you have to reach out to others. And as human beings, we're not meant to do this alone and be alone. So this is more of a time for us all to work together to bring about much needed healing inside and out.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Nisbeth. Dr. Brew, what are your final thoughts regarding tonight's discussion?
One, just like what Zalika said earlier, we all suffer when a physician leaves their medical practice. So one, normalizing physicians being humans and knowing that you need to take care of yourself. As any kind of healthcare worker, everyone in healthcare needs to take extra special care of themselves right now because we're all recovering from being burned out before COVID, burned out with COVID, and trying to make it through this whatever virus is coming up now. So really taking that time to care for yourself and creating support team for yourself. It's not just going to be one person that helps you through your journey. There's going to be several. So finding what support you need for you to be the best version of yourself. And if that's me, if that's someone else, whoever that is, you create that system for you, because you're not going to be able to help anybody if you're not filling up your cup and helping yourself. And also, one other last thing is know that you have options. Know that whatever area in healthcare you're in, you're skilled, that you can use that skill in a variety of different ways. And look around, ask different people. Don't be afraid to try different things because you'll benefit from it.
Thank you, Dr. Brew, and thank you, Dr. Nisbeth. Dr. Kane, what are your final thoughts for tonight as Dr. Nisbeth waves the book, The Sacred Rest?
Sacred Rest.
And we can put that on the website, Dr. Nisbeth.
We'll put it on the website for them to
Okay.
I think what both these ladies have embodied is the Dr. Nisbet said it, and Dr. Brew backed it up. And that is, physician, heal thyself. You're the only person that knows how you can function, how you can maintain in the world that is presented to you today, and in terms of trying to maneuver through the maze of survival, both as a person, an individual, as a physician. You're the one that knows better than anyone else, because it's your world and you're the one that has to live in it. Anybody else, they can be in or out, but it's still yours, because you're the only one in control, and you're the only one that have to live in your world. Now, with that being said, there's a couple of things. You guys mentioned guilt about doing, people that may be doing or look to leave the traditional practice of medicine. I've been in Health Zone 1, and everybody, and maternity particularly, as you know, Health Zone 1 is that area in Jacksonville that is just very tough in terms of being physicians and trying to take care of patients, because we have very sick patients. The society in which they're living in is very biased against them from a health standpoint, as it relates to food and medicine and so on and so on. And so, because of the promises that we made ourselves when we decided to get into medicine, it seems like at every step of the way or every door we come to, that there's someone against us from trying to help our community like we want to, that we need to do. And but you can't I can't emphasize enough, you cannot take care of anybody from the grave. So you have to do self-survival first, and then try to help others to survive. There's a whole bunch of young folks these days coming into and out of medicine in terms of training, that they're presented with a much different picture than what I was presented with. Okay, I presented with a very prejudicial, racial picture, but there's no different along the prejudices today, other than the community that we serve tend to understood and respected physicians the way that we were previously advised that how physicians were respected in the community. COVID brought out, COVID brought out so many disconcerting, so many issues and so many feelings with physicians and patients, but especially as far as physicians dealing with some of those patients that showed their selfishness as it relates to the rest of mankind, including their physician, that physicians really got tired and just saw some of the writing on the wall. So I've had many of my colleagues my age, have retired, or they've sold out to the bigger institution. And it's only guilt that has kept me not sold out yet. But how long will that guilt last is what I don't know. I take pride, I take comfort in helping to deal with patients and their needs, everyday needs. And I have a lot of patients that do like Dr. Brew, patients that I've experienced with her that came to me and just was so proud to have been, and so happy to have been taken care of by her. And my patients tend to sometimes show the same appreciation. But that can only take you so far. I've worked in a community that I'd be a lot richer if I did not work in that community. A lot richer in terms of dollars and cents. I feel, because I came in another time zone compared to these young ladies, I feel fulfilled along with my ethical concerns that I created way back then. I'm feeling fulfilled with it, but time goes on and time is going to catch up with everybody, including myself. And we have got to learn how to matriculate between what physicians need, what patients need, what society need, and patients have to be concerned about their physicians and physicians about their patients. I'm so proud of these guys trying to just hang in there and serve the community as best they can and still serve their families in the same fashion. And they've done a good job. And there's multiple ways to do it. There's no one best way, but there are many ways to do it. And Dr. Nesbitt and Dr. Brew have articulated this evening their ways of matriculating through this complicated maze of medical care. There are 110,000 physician shortages expected by 2030. 43,000 of them is expected to be primary care. Remember, those are the guys on the front line. Those would be your front soldiers if you were back in Vietnam or you were back in World War II. Those are the guys that took the brunt of what the enemy presented them with. And if you don't support them and help them try to help you, then we're going to lose this war. As people, as patients, as families, we will lose this war in terms of healthcare to our community. So I appreciate these guys. I thank you very much for coming on this evening. And I think we just barely touched the surface of what it is.
Thank you, Dr. King.
Thank you. And my final thoughts tonight, just to close with a few statistics that I read. The United States faces a projected shortage of between 37,000 and 124,000 physicians within 12 years. According to this one article, there are more than 818,000 physicians involved in direct patient care, with almost 145,000 in residency training. The U.S. Census Bureau estimates the country's population grew 7.4% during that same 10-year period to 331 million from 308. So I say all that to say, and there are some more statistics in this, but this one last one I want to mention. It is projected to climb to 363 million by 2034, with 22.9 million, or 2/3 of the growth, estimated to be people 65 or older who will require more care as they age. I am also reminded, since I was on an airplane recently, as the flight attendants gave you the instructions, that if for any instance you need to, if there is a crisis, the oxygen line will drop down. Before you help the person next to you, which may be your child, you have to put the oxygen on yourself. I am reminded of that as I heard both doctors talk about being burnt out. No matter what their passion was for their patients, as Dr. Bruce said, she always intended to give 100% to her patients, as I'm sure Dr. Nisbeth did. However, when you're not giving 100% to yourself, you have to step back. And that is no matter what profession. But we also have to be reminded to create a healthcare system that allows physicians to have balance with themselves, with their families, and with the responsibilities of work life. So if we have in our audience administrators who are in a position to understand and appreciate and empathize with the physicians on tonight's podcast, and even those who are at their places of employment, let's create a system where we can have balance, where we can have physicians who want to take care of the aging population or those babies that are born every day. Thank you, Dr. Nisbeth. Thank you, Dr. Brew. And always thank my co-host, Dr. Rogers Kane, as we pause for the truth and tell you what's really going on. Next week's discussion is going to be an interesting one. We're going to switch gears a little bit and talk about saving our sons. Too often we're hearing gun violence, the unfortunate situation that happened to those 3 young men at the University of Virginia this past weekend. We're going to talk about saving our sons. We're going to have Mr. George Maxey and another guest to come on and talk to us about some of the work that they're doing. Thank you, everyone. And I know next week is Thanksgiving, but before you pause for Thanksgiving, how about coming to Pause for the Truth and tune in next Tuesday? Good night, everyone.
Good night. All right, guys. Good night. Thank you.